Hey there everyone, I'm Rasenryu, but my friends call me Rasen. It's been quite a bit of time since my last video, but today I want to discuss with you a game that I really love, Absolver. From the very in-depth combat system and online PvP combat trials, to the interesting but all too short offline story mode, I play this game a lot, maybe too much. Like I've been playing this game instead of creating videos for my channel. The point is, I find this game to be a really fun investment of my time, but not a lot of people feel the same way, and in my honest opinion, I can see how they will feel that way. Let me start by going into a little history. Slew, a Parisian indie game developer composed of former Ubisoft Paris employees, began work on their very first game, Absolver, in May of 2015. Their core game concept was to have fluid dynamic movement similar to dance. I think they accomplished that quite beautifully, and I'll elaborate on that soon. The team had previously worked on games including Watch Dogs and the Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon series. Absolver was produced by Devolver Digital, which was primarily associated with the Serious Sam and Hotline Miami series, two of their most successful series to date. They have a pretty good track record for game production. Absolver was first announced in June 2016 at E3 and received some praise, mostly for its originality and combat system. GamesRadar awarded it Best Indie Game of E3, and GamesBeat awarded it the Killer App Killer for compelling and intuitive gameplay in an Unreal Engine game. All very gracious words for Absolver, and I would have to agree with all of them. I too find it to be one of the most interesting games I've played in a while. But there is one word of praise that I thought fits this game the most, and it comes from Chris Graft of Gamasutra. He wrote that this game was a promising start. A promising start. First of all, Absolver has fantastic art direction, a kind of flat shaded look that is also a little desaturated. And for fire, snow, and particle effects, they use little triangles, giving the whole thing a sort of otherworldly feel. The soundtrack is beautiful, yet ominous, and lends itself to Slowclap's "Combat is a Dance" tagline. It's mostly ambient and is most noticeable when you're in combat. The entire combat system, with building a deck, managing stamina, and specific defensive moves for different classes, shows how dedicated Slowclap is with wanting to bring their vision of combat to life. I've made many different decks centered around my character, and it's so fun to constantly recreate my style and challenge other players through combat trials. And while not exactly seamless, co-op is always fun. I get together with friends very often and go wild against the NPCs, or play the online 3v3 mode. It's honestly the most fun I have with the game so far. I can totally see why everyone was so enamored with the game at the start. But, while Absolver has some good things going for it, for every pro there is inevitably a con. While fairly interesting, the story campaign isn't very long, and to get the full story, you have to go into the online PvP matchmaking part of the game to unlock it. I wasn't opposed to this decision myself, as I wanted to test my skills against other players anyway, and I also found it to be pretty interesting. I can't think of a game that's done that before. But I can see how some people might not want to go into mandatory matchmaking in order to experience all the lore of a game. After you get the whole story, however, Absolver's replayability is rather low. There's just nothing left to do in the world of Adol after the campaign. Sure, you can go around and collect all the cairns just to say that you have, but other than that, the world is completely empty, save for the respawning NPCs that you previously fought. Couple that with only 2 online modes of play, 1v1 and 3v3, and anyone can see how playing the game can get really old really fast. There's absolutely no way to re-experience the story, and matchmaking can get really repetitive. But that unfortunately isn't the worst of the problems with the game. Those of you who have been enjoying Absolver since launch day already know this, but for those of you who are still new, I'll give you the rundown as to why it was called a promising start. Absolver is not a perfect game, and you may be asking what game is, right? But what I mean is, this game launched with a lot of bugs and server issues. A lot of people compared Absolver to Dark Souls and Street Fighter, weirdly enough. But I think this game is more like For Honor and The Division. Like For Honor, Absolver has interesting and unique mechanics, so you can't mistake it for anything else. But like both For Honor and The Division, it launched with some pretty glaring issues early on, where you couldn't help but wonder, is this game really finished? The answer is no, it was not. The Division launched and had recurring issues with frame rate drops, gear sets and weapon talents not working properly, enemies having 100% accuracy and no damage drop off while at range, enemy movement speed being too fast while chasing after a player, enemies having multiple skill items out at once of the same kind, no status effects being applied to enemies correctly, the quick navigation menu not working at all, and more server disconnections. Some of these may sound familiar, as they are the exact same issues that Absolver has, especially the frame rate drops and NPCs being a little too smart for beginners to handle. And I know the latter doesn't sound like a big deal, but player retention is key for this game to get bigger. If the NPCs that are supposed to go down quicker than bosses are instead imitating Neo from the Matrix, then you're inevitably going to lose some people. We live in an age of video games where it is accepted by many that you may not get a complete game with your purchase, that you may be expected to wait for the developer to finish the game after launch with constant patches and maintenance. And I know that the game retails at $30, but I myself wouldn't even pay $5 for a broken game. I mean, just think about that for a second. If someone you know who is a reliable person wanted to sell you, let's say, a brand new top-of-the-line cell phone, and they sell it to you for half its retail price, you would expect it to come with every feature a full-price cell phone has. But instead, your cell phone can only make phone calls 80% of the time. It may take pictures, or it may automatically switch into recording mode without you wanting it to. The screen may have dead pixels from time to time, and only at times when you really want to read something. The touchscreen works in part, but never in full. And the kicker is that this reliable person says, "Oh yeah, I know about those issues. I'll fix them all in due time, I promise." This is a brand new phone, and instead it's like you bought a hand-me-down or something. The point is, when you pay for new, no matter what the price point is, you expect new. Not like new, not refurbished but with issues. New. Absolver launched with obvious server issues, tons of bugs, and tons of lag. To be fair to Slowclap, they have been periodically fixing and maintaining their game, and some of these issues have been fixed, but some haven't. They still plague the game to this day, and honestly there's no guarantee that they will all be fixed. There's nothing quite like fighting a marked one like Jin Meska or Dormek, and when the battle's getting good, all the action suddenly stops for a moment because another player has just entered the game area that you inhabit. Or when you're fighting online 1v1, and you or your opponent are teleporting everywhere so no one knows who's hitting who. Or when the game glitches in a way where you can't hit your opponent at all. Anyone can see that Absolver is not a perfect game. Its unique concept of honing your skills in your own way is hampered greatly by bugs, latency, and a lack of online and offline content. That being said, there is some good news. The new, long-awaited Downfall expansion is finally coming on September 25th. A new fighting style with a defensive ability that changes with your stance, and with more moves to learn and add to your warrior. A new Adalian Mines mode that's like a procedurally generated dungeon and can be played single or multiplayer. A stronger and smarter NPCs, and school challenges that allow you to compete with other schools through rankings. It sounds like a lot, and it's got fans really excited, so it's not like there won't be any more updates, but it still all depends on how fun the game is as a whole, despite all the issues it has. Ultimately, right now, Absolver suffers from a lack of content and a buggy and laggy game environment. The infrastructure is whack. and the new content will make the game a little more fun to play. But if you have a lousy foundation, then no one is gonna want to play your game. People aren't playing your game because it's not a finished product. It's more like a roughly polished idea. Anyway, that's my theory as to why people aren't playing Absolver, and I'd really like to know what you think. Can more content save the day, or is it just a dead game now? Let me know in the comments below or on my social media, links in the description. If you enjoyed this video, mash those like, sub, and bell buttons. On that note, I'm Rasenryu, and I'll see y'all next time. And one more thing, why do I have the option of naming my character if no one else can see what I named him? What's up with that?